attorney bill. And in so doing, realized that there was absolutely a case to be made against the other side of the joint venture and all of the alter egos that were involved in that process, and they were actually due some money. They were supposed to recoup about $24 billion. Unfortunately, when our American side of the company tried to go to recoup that money, they couldn't. So not only have we lost out this technology, we've lost the talent, we've lost those relationships. We had a really good kind of flagship sort of relationship in that space that could have worked out really well. Unfortunately, none of it did. All of that was lost, and that company ended up their American company went bankrupt. On the Chinese side, all of those companies and their alter egos are still very much thriving and have turned around and started selling this original founder's technology back to us here in Texas.
It's a very common case, actually, more common than most people can imagine. I did want to make a fascinating story. I did want to make a quick comment about supply chains. So we work in the field of technology protection, so we're trying to prevent unwanted technology transfers, really of federally funded technologies to foreign countries of concern. Oftentimes, folks bring up SCRIM, supply chain risk management, and there are intersections, but it's not exactly the same thing. So if you think about supply chain risk management, for example, you may not want parts of the F-35 to be manufactured in a country that is a competitor to the US, right? Because if there's a war fight, there could be a critical stoppage in the manufacturing of the F-35 as a result of that. And supply chain dependency could lead to undue foreign influence, but we really work in sort of the research security side, trying to protect the secret sauce that all your small companies are developing for the DoD, the IP that allows the US warfighter to maintain an advantage over adversaries. We're trying to keep it here in the US so that US companies have it, and so that's just kind of disambiguating that. But one thing I'll also add is that I've definitely done reviews where I look at the proposal, and some of the research US company decides to go and have a sub in China, or even a sub in the US, but you find out that the ultimate beneficial owner of that company in the UK or Europe is actually owned by an entity in China. And the reason why they do it often is to keep prices down on the proposal. The problem with that is that there could be, and there has been a lot of sharing of sensitive or confidential information that shouldn't be shared. And so, so I guess this actually goes to one of your questions about misconceptions that businesses have, and what you were saying that like it could happen to you. It's not only that what could happen to you in a few years from now if you have a partnership with a company in Russia or China that your most sensitive IP is transferred. What could happen today because of the laws that are in place, the Solicitor Extension Act of 2022, NSPM 33, the Chips and Science Act, by law, a lot of analysts now have to look before an award is made, before a federal R&D award is made to a small business like yours. We have to do due diligence. So if you have that partnership, if you have received investment from a company in a foreign country of concern, if your employee, if you don't pay attention to where your employees are coming from, we'll pick up on those risk signals, and you may get denied an award because of that. And you may not even know that that was the reason. A lot of federal entities actually will come back to you and say, you didn't pass the technical review. But that is not necessarily the case. The reason why you may not get the SBIR funding you're looking for might have to do with foreign ownership and control and influence risks that we discovered during our work. So that's why it's important too. It's not just why this is important. It's not just you may lose critical IP down the line. It's that when you apply for U.S. funding now from the federal government, you may get denied awards or contracts because we'll do our homework, and if we find things that raise risk signals, and especially if you fill out different disclosure forms and you don't indicate who your investors are fully and truly, that's just going to be a very loud risk signal, and you may get denied the funding you need today. So, just a few comments.
Very helpful. So, with this, obviously, we've done a lot of very high impactful, landmines out there we can step in. But how do I avoid the trap of I can't afford atrophy. I can't afford not to view foreign investment, which can be very good, leveraging foreign innovative ideas, workforce. I can't let that stop me from proceeding. So how do I set my sensitivity chip at the right level to understand the difference between foreign influence and foreign investment, and walk that fine line without risking blowing myself up later down the line with the hyper posture that we have now?
Yeah, I really appreciate the landmine reference. Actually, there's a good Colorado company that is doing autonomous landmine detection. It's phenomenal. I'm excited about that. So that was perfect. So we've got these tools. We've got, maybe not autonomous. I still, have to get up and be a real person every day. I'm not yet a robot, but we'll see what happens. But we've got opportunities for us, right? So some of these are going to be just being aware. The fact that you're in this room with us right now and having the conversation that we're having is a major step forward, because you're looking already, you already know that there's something behind a curtain that might impact you one way or another, and that's somewhere that, you're already leagues ahead of a lot of the other competition, so to speak, when it comes to this. So being aware is the first step. Being accepting of the fact that it could happen to you is that second step. Can't say that enough. Beyond that, though, is education. Having conversations with experts like myself and Oleg, with the teams that we work on, with DIU, which is an organization that works to lower the barriers to entry for startups and early stage companies, to work with the government, work with us, have the conversations with us. Feel free to ask about these topics, because they are very real, they're very relevant, and they're continuously changing and evolving. So the better education that we can have, every single one of us, myself included, on what's going on out there and what the sort of the methodologies are for folks. Not everybody is nefarious, but for the nefarious folks that are out there trying to take advantage of you, your company, your ideas, and your talent, what are they up to? How are they doing that? What is it that they've been successful in the past? So there are resources from DCSA, Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency, if you want to see stories that have been published as really easy one-page case studies. You can share them through your whole team. These are open and available online for anybody to take a look at, and they can help inform you and your teammates on what's going on out there and what's been caught. It happens at every level of business. Lockheed Martin is always in the news for all kinds of things. It's constant, and there are opportunities to see what has been effective for the adversarial entities to operate in, and that way you can kind of see, all right, maybe we'll sidestep this. On the other side, taking a really good look at the America First investment policy is a phenomenal idea. If you haven't already read that thing in depth, please do, because that also goes into some description on greenfield investments and on some of the other opportunities that companies are going to have to take in order to make sure that the money is kind of quote-unquote clean, or the business and the ventures that they're entering into has already kind of avoided some of the information on the backside. So without having me or my partners or an Oleg or his team to do this for you, education, keeping abreast of what's going on in the news, and staying aware of what you are doing and kind of giving it that critical thought. When you meet someone and you want to engage with them later, think, and then act. That's all I ask.
Yeah, and I think it's only going to get more stringent down the line, unless there is some sort of rebalancing where, for example, the People's Republic of China suddenly becomes a U.S. ally, which could happen if there's some sort of rift with, say, Russia. And there's a balancing act that we do in the U.S. In the Cold War. We didn't have a relationship with China after the Communist Revolution. Suddenly, Kissinger opened that door for Nixon, and then in 1979 we suddenly have a diplomatic relation with China. So you never know, anything could happen, but at present, with that executive order that Amanda mentioned, I think it's going to be, the government is going to be more laser focused, making sure that the companies that it gives R&D funding to, or contracts, especially for national security purposes, that they're quote unquote clean, that there is no chance that there's the company's sensitive information, IP, trade secrets will end up in China, because we do want that unequal advantage if a war ever arises. One thing, last night I was at a happy hour and I spoke to folks about the work that I do, and I got to tell you, over half the people that I spoke to said there was a moment, they had a story where some company from the PRC knocked on their door and they wanted to find out more and engage in some sort of partnership. So for example, I spoke to a drone manufacturer who was at this conference, and DJI approached them early on a few years ago about a partnership. And at that point, he was just working out of his garage with a few folks, and it was like, oh my God, one of the world's biggest drone manufacturer wants to partner with me. This is amazing. Thankfully, he sensed that like maybe something could go amiss, and so he didn't end up into a partnership. Good thing he didn't. DJI is on the 1260H list. It was added to the 1260H list that I mentioned in 2022, recertified last year in 2024. And basically what that means is in 2026, the DoD will be prohibited by law from purchasing any products from DJI. In 2027, it will be prohibited by law from purchasing any products that use any kind of components or software made by DJI. So I had this founder engage in some sort of partnership and become reliant on DJI for anything. In 2027, that person would have been shut off from DoD funding. So that would have been a huge landmine. I will say that, I wrote down some notes, but if an investor comes knocking on your door and dangling a lot of money, and if, it feels too good to be true, really maybe too good to be true. So ask them about like their ownership structure. Ask for a detailed breakdown of their ownership structure, including parent companies, subsidiaries, and ultimate beneficial owners. Do your homework a little bit. Ask those questions. It could be a shell company in the Cayman Islands. It could be what appears to be a European investor, but ask who the ultimate beneficial owner is. Request documentation identifying all individuals or entities with significant control or ownership. For example, over 25%. Require the investor that comes knocking on your door to provide anti-money laundering and know your customer verification documents. Request official registration documents. Ask for a signed declaration confirming that no part of the investment is controlled by entities or individuals affiliated with the People's Republic of China. And if your investor is being opaque or resists giving you that information, think twice about taking their money. Even if it's, even if you think you set up some firewall protections that will definitely protect your IP, just think twice, because a lot of companies thought that their IP would be protected because of some legal documents they signed, and they later learned that it just wasn't the case. So.
Yeah, if I may, really quickly, you guys run your companies. So if you need to ask questions to know who you're working with or who you're bringing on the team, ask the questions.
Yeah. And if they resist answering them, or they obfuscate things, or if you can get a PitchBook account or a Craft account, which doesn't cost too much money. You can also look up some of your investors online and see who the ultimate beneficial owner is. And if you see a discrepancy between the answer they give you and what you find online, huge red flag.
So, for those of us who don't have direct access to an Lake and Amanda, you mentioned a lot of government resources that are out there to help us, Lake up. It'd be great if there was a published list of questions that, just like you just ran through, like the checklist. What other things are out there? How can we get quickly educated on this to get dangerous enough? Because the last thing we want is to, find out any of this after we've already fallen into this information.
Yeah, I can offer two separate things, I suppose, because I'm very much about if we can empower ourselves ahead of time, let's do that, right? So when it comes to adversarial investment, for example, or malign influence in the investment structures or in sort of the team structuring, like I said, you run your companies. You guys are in charge of corporate policy. You guys are in charge of creating and amending that corporate policy. If that policy can include language that, in our case, with our due diligence program at DIU, we've had really good best practices almost with corporate policy documents that are less off and tailored to each company that have used this so far, that basically say, if we find out down the road that one of our investors has some CCP alignment or has some other thing that we don't want based on the American First Investment Policy, then we have some recourse, we have options, and that's already written into your company documentation at the beginning. So when you go into those conversations, you are already empowered to know, hey, we can fix it if something goes crazy that we did not know about, or that we find out later after the fact. That's going to be really helpful. On the other hand, it might deter folks that do have some sort of, ulterior motive from even having a conversation. In other parlance, it makes you a harder target. for folks that just want to take advantage. So you can get ahead of that. On the flip side, we do have really cool documentation from the Department of Defense, like the CDSE website, the Center for Development of Excellence in Security. There are tons of really long names that are online that are open to the public to take a look at. But more than anything, empower yourselves, get the education, the knowledge, put it in writing, and then move ahead knowing that you are at least a few steps ahead of the game and you are a harder target in advance. Do the research where you can, think before you act, and that's going to put you ahead of the curve in any of these situations that we come across.
And another recommendation, just be honest when you're filling out applications for funding from the U.S. government for R&D. The worst thing you can do is lie or obfuscate things. We're seeing it. And sometimes we don't even know why folks are doing it. Maybe they're paranoid, but if we see that, using our tools, and the tools are getting better. There's more analysts, we have more platforms, there are more companies catering to providing us with the tools to do due diligence at scale and speed. If we catch that, we're not gonna necessarily engage in a long conversation what was your intention in lying on this form? Did you lie? Was it knowing, unknowing? We're just gonna signal to the leaders who make the decision, and when they see it, they're gonna assume the worst, right? So just be honest. But also know that ultimately the U.S. government, we don't want to destroy R&D programs, federal R&D programs. We want U.S. companies to succeed. So if you did a few years ago get an investment from Tencent and they still have some sort of equity in your company, that's not necessarily the end of the world. Do disclose it, and then you may have a chance to talk with the government and say, okay, I actually want to divest it. And there's a great story that Amanda can share that you told me about that kind of shows you how the U.S. government ultimately does want you to succeed. We just want to make sure that the cutting edge technologies that have military applications don't end up in adversarial countries. So do you mind sharing that story? Because I think it's a good example.
We've got time.
No,
Perfect.
please.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I'll keep all of the companies' names out, but there is a specific fund I will share with you. So DIU was running a commercial solutions opening. That's our prototyping process. This is how we compete. You guys are probably familiar with it. If not, please take a look at it on our DIU.mil website. I am shamelessly plugging DIU at this moment. But please take a look at those. So this company it was essentially an AI/ML company running for a solicitation to compete against a bunch of other companies for a project for both DIU use, specifically for business intelligence and due diligence purposes, as well as a much larger DoD customer that has an intelligence component. So it was very key for us to assess these technologies and these platforms that the companies were bringing to us and really do a very solid due diligence on the other side of that very discreetly and try to understand what was going on under the hoods of each of these companies. We found one that had and has a phenomenal solution for open source, actual scraping of the internet, doing amazing things and creating something. I am clearly not an AI expert, so, but it creates something that I, as a non-AI/ML expert, can look at, understand, and then identify, hey, we've got some risk signals here, let's dig into this some more somewhere else. So this entity, as it turned out, had been headed by a former leader in government who had a DoD connection and did not know, he had absolutely no idea, that on his cap table was an 11% stake from the Sino-French Innovation Fund. When you hear Sino, we know what that means, especially in this room. So did not know, had no idea there was an 11% stake and multiple folks on the board that had, for whatever reason, some kind of relationships, not just in regular type of board relationships where you kind of can oversee things, but they were involved. It was an involved process where they wanted access to the technology and to the IP in order for them to kind of be part of this process. That was their Sino-French Innovation Fund going on there. So what we ended up doing as DIU was realizing, hey, we've got a lot of risk. We brought that up to the team, and the team of our technical experts said, no, this is the only thing that does this and does it this way, does it this fast. We need this. And our customer, that other DoD element, they need it. There is no other solution that's going to meet this bill. There's no way. And oh, by the way, if we don't have it, guess who gets it? So we decided that was not an acceptable amount of risk. The risk that we identified through our diligence process we needed to figure out what was going on with the company to continue the relationship and make sure that this technology stayed out of the CCP's hands and stayed out of any of the CCP's friends' hands too. We didn't want it to even go that far. So we sat down as due diligence with the founders of the company and with the product staff as well, and we let them know, hey, this is what we identified, this is what's going on, this is what it means to us, and let's have a conversation about what our next steps might be. So that company decided it was not worth having that level of investment from that specific shareholder, and they decided, hey, we're open to changing this out, but bro, we need cash. What do we do? So we got a little creative, and we worked with the Defense Investor Network. We've got patriotic investors in the United States who come from all places, all walks of life, all different countries, etc., and they're dedicated to this defense mission alongside us. So we sat down with some of those guys and we said, hey, how do we switch this out? Can we surgically remove a good amount of this funding and replace it with patriotic capital instead? And our friend said, yes, let's freaking do this. So they were really excited about it. We were excited too. We took that 11% stake down to 2%, and along with that change went those board seats that we were concerned about. There was still one person on the board, but they were non-voting. They changed the whole structure for what that board membership meant. We did not stop there. We actually went to the French side of the Sino-French Innovation Fund, and we said, hey friends, bonjour. That's about all the French I've got. This is what's going on. What do you want to do about it? And they decided, after a couple of days of conversation and after hearing what we did with our patriotic investors to kind of switch some stuff around for this company, the Sino-French Innovation Fund very quickly became a French innovation fund. The Sino part was dropped, and they ended up divesting entirely. And that was a huge win, not just for us, for the company, for the DIU solicitation, for the DoD component that needed that solution. Huge win for the government, huge win for open source information technologies as well. But it was also a win with our allies too. We're not just, I mean, we're Americans. We're in this room trying to do right by America, but we're also good partners and good friends with things like this. So we're out there doing our best, and in this case and in many other cases similar to it, we were able to do that flagship, not just diligence, but some action that we were able to take beyond it. The company that I am referencing is one of my databases that I use every single day, even on the weekends.
This is another example without using any names. I was at a due diligence workshop, and a very famous DoD component, cutting edge component, had a case where they were doing their due diligence, and the principal investigator of the proposal turns out has been receiving from the DoD as part of this company funding from the SIVER program for years, but meanwhile co-authoring papers with folks who are based at state key labs or key labs in the People's Republic of China, including ones that turns out were defense laboratories. Co-authoring papers on the same technical areas that the company was getting funding from the Defense Department to do research and development in. That agency, this is just kind of a story of like the U.S. government wants U.S. businesses to succeed. We just wanted to benefit the U.S. and our allies versus our adversaries. That federal agency, to its credit, went to the company, went to the CEO, and said, you know this principal investigator who also is the chief technology officer in your company has published these articles. And they printed out dozens of articles and showed them the affiliations, showed them the acknowledgement section where it says where the funding came from. Did you know about this? And the CEO did not know about that. And then the CEO had a discussion with the CTO. The CTO was ultimately let go. The principal investigator was changed to someone else, and that company ended up getting the funding, right? But so that's kind of the story of like, just be truthful, be honest. Know that you may be engaged in less conversation with the government, where they might see risk signals that your company has, and they might want to have a mitigation strategy, and they will probably be serious. If they say, hey, we want you to replace the principal investigator with someone else because we're seeing too many risk signals, they really mean that. There's no like gray area in most of the cases that I've seen. So just be open to that happening, and know that the U.S. government definitely wants you to succeed as a U.S. business, but we just want you to do it in the right way.
It's fantastic. Before I turn it over to you guys to ask a couple questions for the last couple minutes here, but I do have an ask. I mean, as we're going to these cocktail parties, and I mentioned that we're doing this panels and things like this on this, I inevitably find out everybody has a story. So if you have a particular story to share, I'd love to weave that into the questions to say, maybe experience you've had, because as you can tell, no one's trying to walk the contracts. No one's trying to twist their mustache. What we're looking for is what are these things? How can we save the next person from being approached like that? How can we save the next situation to stop before it happens? What are the trends? And these stories you might be telling today might be able to feed it so we can bring the weight of the larger processes to bear that we can't do individually to collectively get better. So opening up the floor to any questions and specific experiences, please.
Hello, I'm Taya. I'm the founder of ATS Innovations, and I've invented a compression glove with resistance bands to help with carpal tunnel arthritis, musculoskeletal prevention and healing. My manufacturer is in China, and my second manufacturer is in China. And I've tried to have it made in the US, too expensive, can't get it done. I'm looking for other manufacturing, but mine's not a national security concern. Mine's not like gonna, It's not a national security concern or gonna affect the U.S. negatively in that way. Would I still be eligible for funding, or do I have to change my manufacturer? For like CIBR, SITR, defense contracting, DIU, I'm in the VA medical centers already, helping people who already have these musculoskeletal injuries, and my device can also be used to prevent those. So I'm trying to get contracts now, do research now, but do I need to change my manufacturing before I'm eligible for that, or no?
Great question, by the way. This is like the #1 question we hear. Like, my manufacturing, a lot of it is based in China. Like, what do I do? You want to answer that?
I was going to offer to you.
Yeah, I mean, there's no is there a risk of tech transfer of your whatever is the IP or trade secrets you have that is contingent on that manufacturing made in China?
I've got a patent.
Yeah. I would say it depends on the context. I mean, just as an example, I've been involved in cases where some of the research and development was going to be done by a PRC entity specifically because it costs less money. But there, we worked with the company to change it to a U.S. company because there was a lot of sharing of sensitive data. And that's what that's my main thing, is preventing unwanted technology transfer. So that was that case. And what ended up happening is the proposal to the government became more expensive, but the government was willing to pay more money to have that security. I don't know, your case is a little bit different. It's not a technology area that I've worked on. And so in and of itself, I would say that's not necessarily a blocker for you getting funding. I wouldn't say don't be disheartened. I just say that when you apply for funding, talk with the government representative that is leading that effort and ask them that question. And they may tell you, because there is no national security dimension or military application to your product, that it's not it's okay. So.
Let you scan all the scrolling in TikTok and attract my emotions to scroll.
Yeah,
no.
Your thumbs are going to be hurting you. You sleep in my gloves. And you want Metaflex? ETAFLBX glove.com. Yeah, we're helping tons of people. Are you on market?
So is this a question or a marketing opportunity for you?
It's always a marketing opportunity.
Okay, well done. Yeah.
So hello everyone, my name is Lee. Very nice to meet all of you here. So I'm a startup founder of a fintech company. I'm starting a platform for stock investors with AI so that we can provide secure and risk-free trade investment marketplace. I really want to connect you someone from the US government or some more members that has been accredited by the US government for my purchase. But as an international product, I'm not US citizen. It's hard for me to reach out to when I search on the internet, SEO, or do anything on the world. It's hard for me to find out any group or community that is support support for staff from entrepreneur that's from another country that they want to do business inside America. So can you help me provide some link community later that I can join and can connect with the other member co-founders or something like that?
Yeah, I think a little bit. And granted, you know, from DIU, we're constantly putting out what we are calling areas of interest. And these are opportunities to submit your solutions specific to your company and across everyone in the room. So if you see something on our website that looks like something that fits your business model or your lines of effort, and you think you have a solution that answers the question that the DoD is asking in that way, put your hat in the ring. Absolutely put the submission in and see if that's something that can work through our process. Beyond our DIU scope, where we're working to lower the barriers to entry of this type of nature with our areas of interest being published all the time. They're also on LinkedIn, so you can check there too. But if it's beyond that scope and it doesn't really quite fit in our 7 categories of different technology verticals, I don't have a really great answer for you, but I do highly recommend our diu.mil website.
Okay.
Hi, Jim McKenzie with Silicon Core Technology. So we have stories across the whole breadth of everything we cover. We're every day competing against our own stolen technology. We have had SIVers, several SIVers, and one of our SIVers was flagged because a sister company of ours has operations in China. There's no Chinese ownership. And so one of my questions is, how do we, as a U.S. entity, U.S. owned and U.S. investors, demonstrate a firewall that we're insulated from this sister company's operations?
Yes.
We
We
have a whole commercial side. We have to manufacture in China. Like, there's really, for us to be competitive, there's really no other option for our tech. Because quite frankly, the U.S. is way behind on this tech, and the tech leadership happens in China. And so, for us even like trying to domesticate our manufacturing, not only would it be more expensive, but it'd be generations behind in the technology.
Absolutely. There's really, at least in our experience, because we do see this fairly frequently with certain companies of certain sizes that work through our portfolios, work through our solicitations, what it really comes down to is really understanding and being straightforward with, yes, we do have this, but this is the ownership structure. This is what they control, this is what they don't control. This is why they're required and necessary, but there is no foreign ownership, control, and influence concern here for this reason, and this is why. It comes down to that conversation a lot of times, or when the question comes from the DIUs or the other organizations about that. It's not a gotcha game. It's we see this, we want to understand it before we move forward. Unfortunately, there's not a good way, I would say, to firewall, because every business is different, every organization, every relationship is different. So we take it on a case-by-case basis to make sure we're doing our due diligence, and we're treating everybody as fairly and equitably as we can throughout this process. So there's kind of your answer for you, sir, but.
Okay. Good answer, yeah.
Oh man, all right. I'm ready. Look at that. So kind of follow up. So at the end of your talk, you talked a lot about really diving into detail with companies to help mitigate some of these issues. At the beginning, you mentioned an example, and I think Jim and your team has experienced this as well, where let's say a SIVR reviewer will just decline a proposal and not tell the company what the issues were. Can you talk a little bit about what you guys might be doing, or what we as a community can do to help really move more towards the collaborative communication, let's help fix the issue, as opposed to, hey, we're afraid that we might break some legal rules by telling you anything, so we're just going to reject your proposal. I think that increases so much risk, because somebody else might not see the same things, might not have a great due diligence team that might actually make an award. So how do we do more to share information?
I would say, again, it goes back to being transparent and being honest. And so I've seen cases where a company submitted dozens of proposals in a single solicitation round to the Navy, as an example. This was last year. And on each one of the foreign disclosure forms, it answered no to each one of the questions. So there was actually publicly available information showing that they had foreign ownership, and that it was actually based in a foreign country. It was actually on their LinkedIn. And so they did that, they answered untruthfully 12 cases. And so in that case, it chose a pattern, they chose an intent. And there was a decision, it's like, this is a bad actor, they're acting in bad faith. If you act in good faith and you are transparent, almost certainly the DoD or other federal agency will try to work with your company, will talk to you about the risk, and they won't just say, hey, you've been declined because of that review. So just know that.
Yeah, in our case, DIU does operate a little bit differently in this, and we don't have a form disclosure sort of checklist that you say yes or no to for a lot of our processes. So we're just real good at finding dirt, that's what we do. But that being said, it's the same point, you know, please be straightforward, that's the word I was trying to kind of blank out. Be straightforward, be honest with what you've got going on, and we can work with you on that. However, a lot of the solutions that are submitted for us that we see end up having risk signals that are also particularly high, especially if we're talking about our adversarial near peer competition. They also have other issues. So for us, if we're identifying this level of risk across the categories that we're looking for in our diligence process, we may also be identifying, hey, we've got an issue with technical merit, with co-patenting, and we've got somebody else that's working that's actually even better, or we have other sorts of commercial viability issues that we just can't, in good faith, award a prototyping contract or an award to this entity anyway. So that's probably 90% of what we run into at DIU, at least, is kind of in that category where, yeah, there's a lot of risk, but it's across the board. There's a lot of things going on at that company that we're gonna have to have kind of them figure out before they can come back and be eligible for what we're working on across technical merit, across innovation merit, and then of course across company viability and the due diligence risk piece.
Fantastic. Well, really appreciate everyone's coming. Really appreciate the time to be with you guys. I know you got to catch a flight, so we get out of here right away. I'm looking forward to trolling your LinkedIn so I can see all these nice links.
Please
put up in your humble brags after this. Please don't disappoint. and glad we could get this together. Thank you guys.
All right.